All right, guys, so we have it so we can mark our messages as read or mark as new, and it works, right? If I click mark as read, it changes in the database. It shows us a success. It even changes the button, but this doesn't change right here, this notification, until I reload the page. So what I want to happen is I want to click the button and have that change right away. And in order to do that, since these are two completely different components, we're going to be using global state using the context API that React provides. All right, so we're going to change some things around. Basically, the unread message count, which is this right here, the number, instead of having this in local state, right, in component state, it's going to be in a global context. So let's do that. Let's create in the root, we're going to have a new folder called context. And if you had a lot of global state, a lot of context, you could have separate files. Like we could have a message context for this. But since we're not going to be using a ton of global state values, I'm just going to create a file and call it global context.js. So that way, if you have anything that you want to share between multiple components or whatever, then you can just use this one file. So what we want to do first is we're going to make this client, use client, because we are going to be using some hooks. And then let's import what we need from React. So we need create context. We need the use context. And we also want use state, because we're going to be creating a state value like this inside of our context rather than in here. All right, so let's create the context. So say create context, and we can do that. Say global context, and we can do that by just using that create context that we brought in. Then we need to create a provider, because we need to provide that context to the rest of our application so that we have access to any values we put in here. So let's say export function, if I can spell, so export function, and we'll call it global provider. Okay, so global provider, and this is going to be wrapped around our application, so it's going to take in a prop of children. Okay, and then what we'll do here is return, let's say return, open up some parentheses, and then global context dot provider, and then the children go here. So whatever we wrap will go there. And then we want to export down here, let's say create a custom hook to access context. So we'll export a function called use global context. And then all we're going to do from here is just return, and this is where we use the use context hook, and we just pass in our global context. All right, now for any global state that we want, we can just put it in this provider component, such as this unread count. So I'll actually copy that and put that here. And let's see, let's go down to the provider here, and then what we do is pass a value prop into this. So we'll say value, and it's going to be an object, so we're going to actually have two sets of curly braces. And then in here we'll say unread count, and we also want to pass set unread count, because we want to be able to get the value, whatever the value is with this, and we want to be able to change it from other components using this. And that should be all we really need to do here. So in order to use the context, we need to use the provider in our layout. So let's go to our app/layout.jsx, and let's bring in, I'll do it right here. So I'm going to import, and we want to bring in global provider from context/global context. And then we just want to basically wrap everything in that global provider like this. Okay, so we want to take that ending tag and we're going to put that down at the bottom. And now our entire application is wrapped in that context. Make sure we have no weird errors. Now all we need to do is go to this component, the unread message count, and let's see, we're going to go up to the top here. We're going to import our use global context, right, that we created. So this right here. So this is to be brought into the layout and wrap the application. This is to be brought in whenever we want to use our context, whether that's to get the unread count or to set the unread count. And here we're going to bring in that. And then this unread count and set unread count are going to be from here, going to be from the global context. So we want to change use state to use global context, take that 0 out, and these aren't going to be square brackets anymore. They're going to be curly braces. So we just want to do that because we're just structuring it from the value of the provider. So let's go ahead and save that, and we should still see the same thing. Okay, so it's still getting, because in the fetch right here, in the use effect, when we fetch our unread messages, we're still setting the unread count, which is now calling this set unread count. Now when we click the button, we also want to call it from the global context, so we need to go to that button, which is in the message component, right? So that message component has the button which calls this handle read click. Now before we do that, let's just make sure we bring in our global context. So we're going to say import global, or sorry, use global context. And let's see, we're going to add down here const and then set, so what was it called? Set unread count. So set unread count from that use global context. And then where we want to call this is going to be after, so in the handle read click, after this set is read, which is just the local state, we're then going to call set unread count, and we're going to pass in a function and say the previous value or previous count. And then we're going to set, let's open up some parentheses here and say read. So if read, so if that's true, then we're going to set it to the previous count -1, -1, else then we're going to set the prev count +1. So when you mark your message as read or as new, the number in the nav bar will immediately update, either plus or minus. So let's try it out. We'll save that, make sure we have no errors. And now as soon as I click mark as read here, see that? It went down to 1. If I reload, it's going to stay at 1. If I click see how it's 1 right now. If I click mark as new, it changes to 2. So now it's connected where I click the button, it goes up to the global state or the context, changes that value, and then this one takes it from the global state or the context and then shows the updated value. Okay, so I know that can be a little confusing, but hopefully that makes sense. Now another thing I want to do is set it on delete, because right now if we have something that's new and I delete it, it's not going to change the number. So let's go into, well, we don't need to go into, it's in the same file, but let's go down to the handle delete click. And we're going to go right under, let's see, right under this set is deleted. And let's say set unread count. And here we want to pass in, again, just like we did up above, the previous count. And of course we want a -1 from it because we're deleting it. So let's say prev count -1. So now I'm going to come over here and just reload. And we have 2. I'm going to delete this one, which is new. If I click delete, you can see it went down to 1. If I reload, it should still be at 1. So that's how we can use context. Just like in a regular React application, we can also use it in Next.js. So I believe our message system is complete. Of course, there's things you could add to this. You could have a reply, and you could be able to reply through the application. Right now, we basically have it so you get a message, you see the message, and then you have the user's email, which you can click on to reply through email. But yeah, you could add on to this if you want, and maybe I will add on to it in the future. But I think for now, we're going to stick with it how it is. And in the next section, we're going to start to get into some just smaller things around the site, like pagination. So if we have 100 listings, we don't want to show all 100. We need some pagination. And we're also going to do the photo light box. So if we click on one of these, it opens a light box that we can scroll through. And of course, we want to be able to deploy this application as well.